Hello my friends and welcome back to my channel. Okay, so today I have a weekly reading wrap-up video for you. I have decided to temporarily take a break from vlogging. I think that at this point, I kind of think the next few weeks I might not have a weekly vlog. I will probably only... Well, I don't want to commit to anything, but I would really like to vlog around, like, when Thanksgiving starts, but I wanted to take a little bit of a break from vlogging because I want to do Vlogmas, where I vlog every single day. I did that last year, and basically the way that I do it is I don't necessarily have a video every day, but I do vlog every day, and then once I have, like, enough minutes for a vlog, then I'll put the video out. So it usually ended up being anywhere from like 20 to 30 minutes of a vlog, so those will be coming soon. I loved doing Vlogmas last year, but it was definitely very time consuming, so I'm kind of giving myself a little bit of a break from vlogging and hoping to focus on Vlogmas in December. So let's talk about my weekly reading. We're just going to wrap up the books that I read. So I had a fantastic reading week, honestly. Like, I had the best reading week that I think I've had in a really long time. I read so many books, like I was just burning through them. And they were all audio except for one. And the one book that I physically read is actually a book that I've been working through for the last like 2 weeks. So I finally finished that one. That's going to be included here. So let's go ahead and talk about the books that I read. So most of the books that I read this week were part of the Clifton Forge series by Devney Perry. This series is about, it's a motorcycle club romance, but the thing that I'm sure you all know about it, this is not by any means a new series. It did just finish in August with the 6th book in the series. So it was a really great time to just marathon all of them. I didn't have to wait for anything, so that was a great time. But Jesson has been saying that she thinks I was really going to love this series, so when I finished Indigo Ridge last week, I thought now's the perfect time to just jump on into this, and I'm really glad that I did, because I went into the first book, Steel King, just with my expectations kind of lowered a lot, because I didn't necessarily completely love Indigo Ridge. I had some issues with that, which I talked about both in my vlog and in my monthly wrap-up, so I had tempered my expectations, and I think that that is something that I've realized a lot this week, is when I have really high expectations for a book, and I've known this before, it's really hard for them to get met, but when I sort of lower them and I'm like, I don't know, we'll see how it's gonna go, I don't know if I'm gonna like it, then I'm usually much more able to really enjoy the book. So that's exactly what happened here. So this series, it's a motorcycle romance series. The thing that I think is really interesting about this series is that they're not actively in the motorcycle club. Like, they're not doing crime or anything like that. Like, they're retired, they have decided they're going to put that behind them, and they're trying to move forward in a successful life. But of course, the events that they did in their motorcycle club have come to haunt them, and that's a big part of the whole overall plot of this book. So the first book has Bryce, who is our heroine. She is a journalist, and she moves into town. She starts, like, running the newspaper and things like that, and she's kind of let down by the lack of juicy news that she can report here, until something pretty dramatic happens where a woman is pretty viciously murdered. She's stabbed 7 times, and Bryce is positive that in some way the motorcycle club is responsible for this, or they have connections there. She does end up meeting with the sheriff of the town, who has basically told her back off of the motorcycle club. Like, they're living a peaceful life now, they're not doing anything wrong, don't stir the pot, basically. And of course she doesn't listen to him, so she goes to this garage that they have where they, like, fix motorcycles and cars. It's become a very well-known garage in the country where people will travel to come and have work done. She goes to visit the garage to kind of question them and see if she could dig up any dirt, of course, and she ends up meeting Dash, who is our hero, and he's actually the son of the motorcycle club president, the former president, who's, you know, retired and everything like that. And she starts asking some questions, and she starts, like, putting these threads together of what she thinks might have happened to the woman and how she was killed, and she thinks there are implications that the motorcycle club is responsible for it in some way. and Dash is out to, like, tell her, no, you're totally not. Now, Bryce is a very intelligent woman. She is very smart and very feisty, and I think at times she could feel a little bit abrasive. Like, she's definitely that type of woman who is like, she's not going to take no for an answer. She's going to go and do whatever she wants, and she is definitely feisty in that way, which I enjoy, but there were some times where I was like, she kind of pushed it a little too far. But I think that having Dash there really balanced her out, because he was immediately struck with her beauty. Like, he was super attracted to her. But he's also very impressed with her intelligence and her ability to try and find out answers to these problems. So she's sort of setting this case up that Dash's dad was responsible for the murder, and Dash is setting out to try and prove her wrong, that no, my dad was innocent. So there is this really big plot. Trouble happens, of course, and they just continually are drawn together, and they have this very powerful connection, and it was just super enjoyable. This book was a 5-star read for me. I loved it. I felt like it was just a ton of fun from beginning to end. I just thoroughly enjoyed my reading experience with this. I felt like it had the perfect blend of, like, a small town feel. It had excellent chemistry between the hero and heroine. There was a really beautiful romance that was built up in here too, and the suspense and the mystery in here really kind of tied it all together to make this just honestly sort of the perfect book that I was looking for. Like, I really loved it. So 5 stars for this one. And the second book is Fallen Jester, which actually is my personal favorite in the series. I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars for sure. And it is definitely my favorite of the whole series. And that's largely because of how emotional it was and how it dealt with some issues that the hero and heroine had that they were struggling to work through, that were not easy, that were a little complex, and I felt like it handled that with a lot of subtlety, and I just really loved that. I also, like, the hero in here is so broken. Like, he is an ex-convict for a very heinous and heartbreaking crime that he feels a lot of guilt and pain about. And he's very broken, and he has lost love, and he's just fantastic. So Fallen Jester has our hero Isaiah, who is honestly just like, I just love him. He's a very, like, I feel like the title of this book is so fitting for him, because he is like he is a riven knight. Like, he's a knight in shining armor, but he's got little dents and dings in his armor. Like, he's not perfect. He's broken. He's made mistakes. He's paying for those mistakes, but his heart is just, like, so pure, and I just loved him so much. So something that I really enjoy about this series is how Devney Perry sets up each future book in the book that she, like, finishes. So at the end of the first book, we see the threads and the beginnings of the second book's couple and their story. And I feel like she just really has such a really great way of building the story, the overall story in these books for each installment. Like, I'm super impressed with her ability to carry off the overall plot thread and story of the entire series while still giving each book its own couple and its own happily ever after, and while still, like, creating a little bit of mystery of this is eventually what might happen and unsolved mysteries. So we don't really know in book 1 who killed the woman. We do find out she has connections to the motorcycle club members and things like that, but we don't get a resolution of that mystery. So in book 2, we have our heroine Genevieve, who we meet in the first book, and her and Isaiah kind of had this team-up moment at the end of book 1, which was very dramatic. You don't really know what happens. You find out what happens in book 2, and there was basically a crime committed that the two of them did, and in order to protect Isaiah from not going to prison so she doesn't testify against him, Genevieve suggests that they marry. So they end up getting married, and it was a very unique take on a marriage of convenience in modern times, and I just felt like it worked perfectly. I loved this couple. I felt like their romance was very beautiful. I will say that this book is a little quieter. It's a little more subtle. It really takes time to build up the overall story and to build up the romance, but I personally really enjoy reading books like that. I think if it's handled in a way that keeps you interested and keeps you intrigued, and Devney Perry really was a master of doing that in this book, I wasn't frustrated and I wasn't like, I didn't feel slow to me. I was just so invested in the story, and especially in these characters and wondering how their romance was going to work, that I was completely on board with it. And it was kind of also a nice change from the first book, which had a lot more fast pace and action, that I really liked sort of a step back and a quieter build of their romance in the story. So I completely loved this one. We do get some answers that we were seeking in the first book, and I just felt like it was so beautiful, and I just dearly, dearly loved it. I love a damaged hero, and watching Isaiah and Genevieve, who had suffered so much loss, come together and find love and be happy was just like, it just made me so happy. I loved it so much. So this one is definitely my favorite in the series. It was just, honestly, I felt like it was perfect. 5 stars for this book, and you will notice that in all of my ratings for this series, I'm being pretty generous. Like, I'm not finding anything I really want to be critical of. I'm just enjoying being swept away in this series. Like, overall, that's like the highest praise that I can give this series, is that I don't often get so caught up in series that I feel the need to just marathon them back to back to back. You know, like, I think the last time that happened was probably when I read The Ravenels, and it took me a few books to do that. You know, it really wasn't until the 3rd book in that series where I was like, okay, I have to read all of these and do that. So with this one, I was just so caught up in the storytelling. I think Devney Perry is an excellent storyteller. She is so good and talented at building up mystery and suspense and romance and heat, everything. Like, it was just so great. So my ratings definitely reflect how caught up and swept away I was in the reading experience, and I have no apologies for that. I don't know if I think it was a combination of her mastery at writing, and also I was probably just perfect timing for me. This was something I needed to read right now that just was hitting the right spot, but I loved it. So the first 2 books were 5-star reads for me for sure. And then the next book is actually a 4-star read for me, and it is Stone Princess. And this book is about Presley, who we have seen in the first 2 books, and we know what is happening in her life. We know how her love life is going, and she ends up being a jilted bride in this book. And we saw it coming. Like, from the beginning, I was just like, you know that's going to happen to Presley. So she ends up being a jilted bride. She's really hurt. You know, she is sort of an adopted member of this family of motorcycle club people. She's never really been an active participant in the club, but she is like secretary, or she helps run the shop, the garage. So she is kind of suffering and going through the trauma of her fiance just like basically leaving her, although, like, truth be told, like, she lucked out there, like, dodged a bullet. But so into town comes Shaw, who is the hero, and he is a big-time movie star. Like, he's the type of man that gets recognized everywhere he goes, huge amount of sex appeal, everybody loves him, everybody wants to be him and wants to be with him. And Presley is not impressed by that at all, and I really like that about her. I really liked Presley. I felt like she was a very strong woman. She's very capable. She bounced back when she gets hit with some really tragic things in her life, and she never, ever, ever lets that, like, defeat her, and I love that about her. So Shaw comes into town because he's just been assigned the role of the lead actor of, they're going to film a movie about the murder of the woman and the motorcycle club and all that stuff. So Presley is definitely very protective because she doesn't want that to be, like, exploited. She doesn't want that story to be exploited because it really centers around and affects people that she loves and cares about. So she's very standoffish with Shaw. Shaw, on the other hand, is extremely taken with Presley, and he is the type of man that's like, you know, it's not hard for him to find a lady or a bedfellow whenever he wants, but he wants Presley, wants her very much. So it's really them sort of circling each other and fighting this attraction, and it's their romance. My issues with this book is largely that it felt, you know, I feel like the things that really won me over in the first 2 books were the very subtle relationship dynamics and sort of the slowly building chemistry between them. And, like, it doesn't always have to be slowly building chemistry, but I felt like a lot of their relationship issues and struggles that the first 2 books had were handled in a way that didn't ever seem, like, very abrupt or very sudden or something that was just kind of, like, thrown in there, you know. Like, I feel like sometimes my critique of certain romances that are popular is because I feel like they just jump too quickly either to the resolution or to the fault of the other. Like, there's not enough of, like, a transition or any type of real subtlety, you know? So I felt like that was missing in this book. It felt a little heavy-handed. I felt like their relationship progressed, like, very quickly without any of the buildup that the others two had had. But I also feel like, in contrast with that, the issue that this couple had and what separated them and sort of broke them up was so, like, over the top. It was a very extreme reaction on our hero's part. He was very fast to jump to conclusions. There was literally nothing that he gave Presley any time to sort of hear her side of the story. Like, he assumed that she behaved in a certain way, and then he, like, cut her off. And I was just like, are you serious? Like, that's... I don't know. I have a hard time with that because it just seemed like such an extreme reaction, and it felt like it was just added in there just to cause drama, and it felt very unrealistic. So I still really enjoyed this one. The story was still super compelling. I still really loved their romance. I really loved the ending and the setup for the next book. But that feeling of just too fast, too hard, just too abrupt, without really, it didn't feel realistic to me. You know, I feel like that's one reason why I really need a little bit more subtlety, is because I want it to feel realistic. I want to really feel like I believe this romance and this story. And so if that happens too quickly for me, then I'm just like, I'm not able to suspend my disbelief, and I'm just like, I don't buy it, you know, like, and then I don't feel invested, and I get bored. So the number one thing that keeps me interested in reading a book is if I'm invested in the characters' lives. And that's another thing that I want to praise her for in this series, is I feel like she understands her characters so well. She's really very expertly able to put them in situations that seem super realistic, like this is exactly how this character would behave. She sets up plots and different stories perfectly, and it just makes complete sense. She knows these characters so well. That comes across to you, and it felt like when I finished this series, I felt a little bereft because I was like, my friends are gone. I can't read about my friends anymore, and it was sad. So my favorite thing overall is character and relationship building, and I felt like she nailed these characters and had them perfectly. Like, Shaw is my least favorite hero in the series. Largely probably because, like, I just am not a huge fan of movie star romances. It seems unrealistic to me. It seems a little unbelievable. And I'm not saying, like, I need everything to be super realistic, but it just didn't work for me. That just added to my dissatisfaction with it. So, but it was still good. Like, I know I've said a lot of things I didn't like about it, but it was still good. 4-star read. But that is the only 4-star read in this series. We're halfway through it. So, okay, the next book is Noble Prince, and this book follows Luke and Scarlet. Luke we have seen in previous books. We have seen him have a little bit of heartache and a little bit of dissatisfaction, but we've also seen what a really good, wholehearted man that he is, and I really love that. He is the sheriff, or the new sheriff in town, and so at the end of Stone Princess, events happen that sort of put him in charge of the care and protection, almost like a bodyguard of Scarlet, who is Presley's sister. Scarlet has found herself in possession of some knowledge that a rival motorcycle club doesn't want her to have, and so they're out to kill her, and so Luke is taking it upon himself to protect her. And so because they do that, she ends up in, like, witness protection, in this little witness protection in the town. She escapes because she just hates it. Like, she's so miserable. You can just tell. Luke finds her and then decides, okay, you and I, we're going to go in this other place, in this cabin in the woods, and we're going to protect you there. And that's where they fall in love. I really love this one. I feel like this book is a big standout in the series for me. It's still not as good as Riven Knight, honestly. Like, that one is still my favorite. But this one was so beautiful because the hero really struggles a lot with this sort of moral question that he has of, I'm the sheriff, so I have to do what's right. But in order to do that, that's going to put this woman that he's grown to love and care about, Scarlet, in jeopardy and possibly separate them. Because if he ends up revealing what he knows, what she has told him, then the FBI is going to come in and take her away, and he doesn't want that to happen. So he struggles with this question of his, like, do I do what I believe to be the right thing is as the sheriff, or do I follow my heart and not do that and protect her and get to stay and live a happy life with her? Like, It was beautifully done. Like, I just love Luke. He's one of my favorite heroes in the stories. He's so protective. He's so tender. He's just so alpha too. Like, I just loved it. I feel like another reason I really like this series is that all of the heroes in here are very much alphas, but they're an alpha mellow where they're alpha, but they're not an alpha hole to their women. Like, they're very soft, they're very tender, they're very loving with them, and I just adore that so much. So this book was very sweet. It was very lovely and romantic. It was also very steamy, and I just loved it. I loved it so much. Okay, now the next book was a really interesting one for me. This one was Fallen Jester. This is the 5th book. This book follows Leo, who is a bit of a scoundrel. Like, he definitely is sort of looking for something to feel whole, and he's sort of numbing that by, like, drinking, partying women, you know, and he has kind of tried to have a little bit of a relationship with Presley, but she didn't really want him to, and so he's kind of just tried to soothe that in other ways with, like, one-night stands or whatever. So he's the hero in here, and our heroine is Cassandra, who we have met in the previous book, and so this book is interesting. This was a 5-star read for me, and this is also one of my favorites in the series, probably under Noble Prince. So if I'm ranking them, Fallen Jester is my favorite, Noble Prince is my second favorite, and then not Fallen Jester, did I say? I keep confusing Fallen Jester and Riven Knight. Okay, Riven Knight is my favorite, book 2. Riven Knight is my favorite. Noble Prince is second. Fallen Jester is third. Steel King is fourth. 5th is Tin Queen, and then my least favorite is Stone Princess. So that's my ranking of them. But I was very surprised at how much I loved this book because it has a lot of things in it that I don't love. So right off the bat, we have our heroine is pregnant with Leo's baby due to a one-night stand. So we open the book when she's pregnant, and Leo doesn't want anything to really do with her. Like, he's honestly a bit of a jerk to her, like, huge jerk to her. He makes some decisions that are really kind of terrible that put her in a position of really, like, suffering and basically at his whim, and he doesn't handle that responsibility very well. He does some things that definitely hurt her, and honestly, it was upsetting me so much that I was like, this is going to be a 3-star read. This is going to be the first book in this series that's a 3-star read because that hero just upset me so much, and I was so frustrated with the decisions he was making. I was just, like, angry with him. But there comes a time in this book where Devney is able to really manipulate every choice that he has made and show him really growing and evolving to realize that his behavior was stupid, that he was really not treating her well, and you watch him sort of grow and change in a way, like, and that was such a powerful experience to me, watching him grow and learn and change from his mistakes. And it was so beautiful watching him realize that he wanted Cassandra as his wife, as the mother of this child. He wanted them to be a family, and her being so willing to, like, forgive him over and over and want to make it work as a family, and just the way he sort of began to really show and express to her how much he cherished and cared for her and protected her, and how much he really adored their little family unit was just beautiful to me. So it was really that redemption arc of Leo from being this womanizer a-hole, didn't want anything to do with his child and treated the woman like crap. But watching him really evolve and get a redemption arc, what I felt like was really beautifully done, and that meant more to me than him being a jerk, so I ended up giving it 5 stars, which I feel like that is a real testament to Devney Perry's power in writing, because all of those things are things that would make me, like, DNF a book or really, like, hate it or rate it really low. But for some reason, she was able to really transform his character arc in a way that felt believable, that felt true, that felt real, and I just loved it. So this was a 5-star read for me, and it was a really surprising 5-star read because, I mean, she took things that I hate, and she made me believe that they could still have love because of that, you know? It was fantastic. I really, really, really enjoyed this one. Okay, and the last book in the series is Tin Queen, and this one follows Emmett, who is a hero I've really been wanting to get his story from. The whole series, you see him, he's this big bear of a man who He's basically a hacker. Like he's able to get all of the information and to protect their little family unit of motorcycle club gangs. But he's really just this giant bear-like man who just sort of exudes this powerful masculinity that is very appealing to women. And the heroine is actually Nova, who is the daughter of the head of the rival motorcycle club gang. And her dad was responsible for killing Emmett's dad, and he doesn't know that. They meet at a club. She knows exactly who he is, and she believes that he is responsible for her brother's death. So she's out there to bring them down, to get them all turned in to the police and get them behind bars, because that's where her dad is at the moment, and she believes her dad to be wrongly accused. So when she meets Emmett, they have this powerful, like this insane attraction with one another. It's so freaking palpable and hot, like they just are drawn to each other. And so they have a couple of really steamy one-night stands where they don't even know each other's names. And then eventually, it's one of those cases, like this is one of those books where something that I typically don't like that is driven by physical attraction, it ends up working for me because of how she built their romance after that. Like the way they just can't stop thinking about each other, the way that Emmett wants her to know information about him that nobody else knows. And also, once the truth is revealed and he realizes who she is and how that is all like wrapped up, I just thought it was beautifully done. This is definitely the steamiest book in the series. It was very hot, but it was also very emotional and just really satisfying on a plot level and as a series conclusion. Like, I adored this book. I thought it was great. 5 stars. So there you have my entire series wrap up, all of my thoughts on these books. Like, again, I highly recommend this series. I thought they were incredibly enjoyable. It was just like the highlight of my week listening to these every day. I listened to like 1 a day, sometimes 2 a day. I just was working and listening to these, and I just was having the best time. So I loved them all. I thought they were fantastic, and I highly recommend them. And I think that these are very different from your typical MC romances in that they don't use a lot of the stupid language like old lady and things like that. It's not really a part of the motorcycle club. It's sort of them trying to live a small town happy life and break free of that, but it still comes back to haunt them. Like, seriously, it was just so good. I can't recommend them highly enough. The whole series, start to finish, was fantastic. I loved it. Okay, and then I read Lore Olympus. So, I have loved this series. Earlier this year, I think in January, I started reading the webcomic so this is actually a webcomic on Webtoon. You can download the app. It's a Hades and Persephone retelling. It's one of the most popular webtoons out there, and it is fabulous. This is my favorite Hades and Persephone retelling. I was talking to Jesson earlier this year about how I was really wanting a great Hades and Persephone retelling, and she kept telling me, you should try Lore Olympus, you should try it. And I'm like, I don't know, I don't want to read a comic on an app, like, it just didn't think I would like it. But I finally caved, and in one of my reading vlogs earlier this year, you get to see me sort of discover it and become obsessed with it and just read the whole thing over the series of a couple of days. So that was back in, I think, like January of this year. It was right before they announced they were going to have physical copies of this. So I had the great experience of getting to read that and report to Jesson and like fangirl over it, because she is the one who got me turned on to the series, and I just loved it. So my pre-order came this week, and of course I had to sit down and just read the whole thing. It's very short to read this book. This is only the first 25 episodes. The current episodes that are out right now are like 183. It's just beautiful. I love this story so much. I feel like Hades is such a sweet cinnamon roll, and Persephone is so cute and quirky and funny, and they just have this great relationship. But this does deal with some really, like, traumatic, sensitive issues of, like, there's a heavy theme of sexual assault in here, but also sort of, like, relationship abuse, abusive relationships, and it's just beautiful and perfect, and I love and adore it, and I'm so happy to have this in physical form. One of my favorite things about this book is getting to, like, here's Hades, looking so Darcy-esque, right? I just love it! Like, I love watching Rachel's art style evolve. I really love seeing what a big part the art plays in the storytelling, because it's such a visual experience, and the text carries the story too, but a lot of the story is told through her art, and I just love that so much. So I love this book. It's 5 stars, obviously. I love it. If you're looking for a great Hades and Persephone retelling, definitely do this. Okay, and then I read The Rebel by Sophie Lark. So this is the book I've been reading physically for a couple of weeks. Physical books take me quite a while to get through, even though I really, really love this one and I was very invested in it. I only have a few minutes to read physically at night. So this book is the second book in her Kingmaker series, and this is about mafia kids who basically go to this boarding school to learn how to be mafia bosses, basically. Like, they have spies, they have heirs, like different houses, basically, so it's very reminiscent of like Hogwarts in that way. They have a house for like spies and heirs who are going to be the people who lead the mafia at some time, and like accountants and enforcers, and there may be some other things. So it's really interesting. It's very fun. I think this series is very clever. I am just, honestly, the more that I read from Sophie Lark, and specifically her newer books, like with every book that is newer that she releases, I'm just really in awe of her talent. I think she's an incredible writer. I think she really has a gift that she's clearly worked at, because right now I'm currently reading one of her first published books, and the difference between that and what she's writing now is so huge, and you can see how much she's improved and grown her skills as a writer. But anyway, I digress. So the thing that I really loved about this book specifically is that it does have a romance. Like, it's heavily a romance. These are these mafia kids from the couples that we met in the Brutal Birthright series, so it's all about them sort of finding their way and going to this mafia school. So this one follows Miles, who is Callum and Ada's son, and Zoe, who is the daughter of a mafia family from Spain that we didn't meet in the Brutal Birthright series. And Zoe is betrothed to be married to Rocco Prince, and that is an arranged marriage, so her family can, like, get out from underneath a lot of debt and have some money. Like, they're really struggling, and they are relying on this alliance to make them successful again. And Rocco Prince is definitely a sociopath. Like, he has no feelings. He really enjoys, I mean, he doesn't have, like, any positive feelings. Like, he loves destruction and terror and causing those things, and he enjoys manipulating Zoe, and he feeds off of her fear. And the whole reason he wants to marry her is so he can own her and terrorize her. So Zoe is just terrified. She doesn't want to go through with this marriage, but she knows that she has to, and one of the reasons she has to is to protect her little sister, who Rocco has come to realize Zoe has feelings, so he uses her to get to Zoe too. So Zoe's little sister, Kat, ends up going to the school too, so it's those three point of views. You have Zoe, Miles, and Kat. This book was absolutely thrilling. Like, I was captivated. There was a little bit in the beginning that was kind of slow before they got to the school, where it was setting up the characters so you sort of knew where they came from and what was going on in their lives. And I enjoyed that, but it felt a little bit slower for me in the beginning, but it quickly picks up. And these characters, like, I was just so invested in their lives. I was so invested in the story. Like, this was phenomenal, and I gave it 5 stars. Like, I loved it. I really loved The Heir, the first book. Loved that so much, gave it 5 stars. I think I love it even better. Like, it was smart, it was clever, it was just, like, thrilling and, like, surprising. It was fabulous. I just loved it. I'm a huge fan. I am a huge fan and can't wait to read the next one. So 5 stars for that. Okay, and then the last book that I read is The Wedding by Julie Garwood. So I have only read one book by Julie Garwood, and it was The Bride, which is the first book in this series, and I didn't really love it. I didn't really love it. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it, mostly because the hero was just a little too over-the-top alpha for me, and I know a lot of people love him. He just didn't work for me, and I don't know if it was the timing that I read it. I don't know if it was, like, where my head was at the time, but it was a 3-star read for me. So, that being said, a lot of that could also be how hyped that book was for me. Like I said, like, my expectations for The Bride were very high, and so I felt a little bit let down. So that being said, I went into The Wedding with much lower expectations. Like, I did not expect to love this. I really had low expectations, but I wanted to read a historical, and I wanted to read this for the Smart Women Read Romance exclusive review that's happening later this month. So I picked it up, and quickly got swept away, and absolutely loved it. Like, okay, I get it, y'all. Y'all who are mad at me for not liking The Bride, I get it. I get the hype about Julie Garwood now, because this book was fantastic, even though this had a really sad scene, trigger warning for the death of an animal, which nobody mentioned, so I'm mentioning that. So if you're mad about that, I'm sorry, but I wish people would mention that more in trigger warnings. So anyway, this book was absolutely beautiful. So we have our heroine, Brenna, who is a wonderful heroine. Like, she was fantastic. She was one of my favorite parts of the book. I loved and adored her so much. She wasn't necessarily like a feisty heroine, but she was very strong, but she was also very calculating. Like, she knew when to make a move or when to stand up and push back against Connor when it was worth it to her or when it was going to pay off, you know, because obviously this book is set in medieval Scotland where women are definitely considered as property, and, you know, like, that's just how it goes at the time. I think it can be fairly common for even old school historical romance authors to make their heroines very feisty and to really fight back at every turn of that. And so in that way, oftentimes for me, they come off a little bit like, not necessarily whiny, but just a little bit bratty, and I just don't really love that. So I was very pleasantly surprised how Brenna was very strong, and she was definitely willing to stand up for things that she wanted, but she didn't do that at every turn, you know, like, she knew when to pick her battles and when to let Connor think he had won, and she also wasn't above, like, going behind his back and doing things secretly and having the servants and the people in the, like, the community, the keep, really, like, work for her and be on her side. Like, she was a wonderful heroine. And Connor was a fantastic hero. Like, he definitely was not your typical alpha hole. He was very alpha for sure, but he was very willing to see things from Brenna's point of view and to give her space to sort of be herself and allow her that, which I really, really loved too. I really loved their romance. I felt like their romance was really very believable, and it was very slow burning and sweet, and I felt like there were parts of this book that were delightfully funny. I mean, in a very understated way. It was very witty. It was just completely delightful. So Brenna is betrothed to be married, and she's on her way to be married when she's sort of accosted by these Highlanders who are in war paint, and they take her, and Connor is the laird, and he decides he's going to take her for his wife. Now, Brenna and Connor met as children when she was very little, and she proposed marriage to him because she just loved his smile, and I thought that was adorable. I am a sucker for childhood sweethearts. And he doesn't remember her at first, and then he does, and so because of that, he's deciding, like, oh, well, she can actually, yeah, I can marry her, and it will be legal. Because he's doing that to sort of get back at at a rival clan, which is a big clan war. He wants to take her because Brenna is supposed to be this rival's wife. So he ends up taking her. And the whole book is really very much just them living their life and trying to figure out how to live and love together and make this relationship work, even though initially Connor is like, okay, I'll let you go just as soon as you sire me an heir, you know, basically. And quickly that turns into they have feelings for each other, they're sort of reluctant to admit them, and it was just beautiful. Like, I really, truly enjoyed this. I get the hype with Julie Garwood now. This was absolutely delightful, and I adored it, so 5 stars for this one. So, there we go. I had an excellent reading week. I honestly am in a state of euphoric bliss right now, thinking about the books that I read this week, and yeah, I'm thrilled. So, thank you so much for watching this video, my friends. I hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next one.